Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. In this tutorial today, I will show you how to build a dynamic player stat with a fully customizable UI. We will be displaying both base and max values and make sure your UI updates in real time as the game progresses. We're also going to create a single function that would be used to update any stat of your choice. So let's dive in and let's bring this player stat to life. I have created a third-person project, a brand new third-person project for the purpose of this player stats, and you can feel free to add this to your existing project or create a new project to follow along. Let's keep it tidy and create a new folder and name this player stats. Inside of this folder, first what we're going to create is a enumeration. This enumeration is going to be a list of all the player stats that you want to have in the game. So e_player stats. And inside of here, I'm going to add a couple player stats. First one is obviously going to be health. Second one is stamina. Third one, you can have a mana. Fourth is defense. Then you have attack, and so on. I'm going to save it and close it. You can add as many as you would like, and this is a dynamic system. So the more and more you add to this player stats enumeration and your data table, the blueprint will automatically update and your UI will automatically update as well. So let's close this player stats. And now we're going to create a structure. You can search for structure, name it s_player stats. And inside of the structure, we're going to have three variables. One is the stat itself. The second one is going to be our max amount, our base amount. This is our base value of the stat, and then also our max value. You can choose not to use a max value, but for the purpose of this training, I'm going to use a max value. And for the stat name, you're going to make it into the type of that enumeration that you just created, player stats. And the base amount and the max amount will be a float. Let's make this base value, just to be consistent. Now you can close this. Go back to your content drawer, right click and search for data table, and you will find data table. And you're going to select this s_player stats as your data structure of your choice. And you're going to press OK. And we're going to name this dt_player stats. Inside of here, we're going to create the first row. The first row is going to be health with base value of 100 and max value of 150. Feel free to change this number to suit your game. The second one, as you can see, this is a drop-down menu, and everything that you created in your enumeration actually shows up in here. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and update stats for every single one of them. I have entered a line item for every single stat in the enumeration. You can choose to expand the system by adding more line items to your enumeration. As such, let's say we want to add a luck stat. We got luck, and then we go to our player stats, add a new line, and then now you would have luck in here. And then we're going to set that to 0 and the max value to like 50. If you don't want to have a max value for your stat, you can always set this to something like a crazy number that your player will never reach. And this would always make sure that your base stat will be able to reach very high numbers. So we're going to zero that out for now. Now we can go ahead and close our player stats and we can close our table. We are going to manage this entire system using a blueprint component. So you can go to blueprint class, right click, select blueprint class, and then select actor component. And we're going to say this player stat_component. Okay, and we're going to press save. And inside of this player stat component, we're going to get rid of the event tick and add a new variable. And the variable is going to be named stat map. And the type is going to be the enumeration that we just created, e_player stats. And here, you're going to click on this little single variable type icon, and we're going to make that into a map. And the map value, the original is going to be the player stats, and the map value is going to be your structure that you just created. So that will be s_player stats. And that's it for the variable creation. Now what we're going to do is when we start the game, we want to initialize this map by taking all of the stats inside of your data table and add it to the map. To do that, we're going to drag off this begin play and we're going to say get data table row names with the plural and select our DT player stats. And we're going to say, drag off of this out row names, say for each loop. And for each loop, we're going to get the data table row. So this time it would be get data table row, not the plural one. We're just going to get the singular one. And here we're going to connect our array element into the row name. And select the data player stats, compile and save. Now that you have connected this, you have the struct available here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our stat map and we're going to drag off of this and we're going to say add. What we're adding is the out row, we're going to add it directly into the stat map, and also we're going to drag off of this and say break player stats, and then we're going to grab the stat here and then add it. You can always select this player stat and click on hide unconnected pins, and it will hide everything else that is not connected, and then connect this row found over here. What this will do is when the game starts, it's going to add all of your previously listed stats from the data table into our stat map. We're going to need a function to update the stat map based on the value that the player sends over. So we're going to go to a function and we're going to say update player stat. In update player stat, we need a couple inputs. First input that we need is the actual stat itself, which we need to update, which would be of type e_player stats. The second and the third variable is going to be our minimum increment, right? And our max increment. So I'm gonna So these both would be float value. Minimum increment is how much you want to increase the base value by, and I can actually make this a base increment to make it consistent. Base increment is how much you want to increase the base value by, and also max increment is how much you want to increase the max value. So for us to increase the max value, we're going to take our stat map and we're going to find the stat that's coming in by dragging off of it and say find. And here we're going to connect this player stat input. And we're going to do a branch by pressing B and clicking. And then if it has found the stat that the player has specified, we want to do something. So let's drag this and plug this in here. Okay. If it has found the proper stat, then we want to take get our stat map and we want to do an add function to this. And what we're adding is basically the struct that we just found. We're going to drag off of this and say break player stats. We're going to say break player stats and then drag the stat into our add function. And now we're going to drag off of our struct and we're going to say make player stats. What this gives us is our stat value and the base value and the max value that we are now be able to edit it. So I'm going to drag the stat from this and then I'm going to plug it in here again. This is directly from what's the player's trying to update. And the base value and the max value, all I'm going to do is take the max value, add our max increment. Instead of dragging it over, I'm going to say get max increment, right? And then set this to our max value. So if you don't increase the max value by anything, it will just stay as it is because max value plus 0 is going to be the same. Let's drag off of the base value and we're going to say add. Add is going to be the same thing. We're going to get our base increment. And we want to do a clamp because we don't want our base value to ever exceed our max value. So we're going to drag off of this output and we're going to say clamp float. And the minimum value is going to be 0. So that means the health will never go down to 0, below 0. And the max value is basically this max value that the player has is going to be our max value. And then I'm going to now drag this into here. And that's it for the function. This true, we're just going to add it over here. And then we're just going to add a return node. And that's it. Just quickly to walk you through. When the player call the update stat, they're going to send in the stat, the base increment value, and the max increment value. Base or max increment value, either or. In the function, we're going to go find the stat that the player has requested to increase. We're going to find out if that stat actually exists in our stat map. If it does, we want to take our stat map and we want to add that stat, but with the modified value. We want to take that stat, we want to add our base increment or our max increment to it, and we want to add that to our stat map so the stat map gets updated. And that is it for the functionality of our player stats. Now we have enabled a player stat with multiple different stats inside of it, and you will be able to update this player stat using this function update player stat from anywhere. If you want to increment the health, you would just go to your base increment and you will add 10. And if you want to reduce the health, you can just type in -10 and then that would do the same thing as well. Now we need to initialize this player component. So to do that, we're going to go to our third person folder, blueprints. Inside of our third person blueprint character, click on add, and we're going to say player stat component. And then now you can press compile. Now you initialize this player stat. To test this function, if it is working, we're going to drag the function over here. After completed, I'm going to drag this over. I want to reduce my health by 10 points, so I'm going to say -10, and then increase my maximum health by 20 points, and I'm going to add that. I'm also going to add a print string right after. Select the print string and press F9. And now I compile, and then when I press play, you will notice that the code just stops right here. And if I hover over the seat map, you'll notice that there's 6 items inside of our seat map. And if I expand that, you'll notice all of the items that you put in your list is here. And if I expand my health, you'll notice my base health, which I set to 100, went down by 10 points, and my max health, which I set to 150, has increased by 20 points. So we know our map is working. And that's how you create the player stat system using a blueprint component. Now we're going to create the UI. Inside of our player stats, I'm going to create a new folder and name it UI. And I'm going to right click user interface and say widget blueprint underscore header. Inside of this header, I'm going to add a overlay. Inside the overlay, I want to add a border. Set this to desired on screen. I want to add 3 additional overlays in here. I'm going to add text boxes inside of each and every single overlay. 1, 2, and 3. This text box, I'm going to rename it to stat. This text box, I'm going to rename it to base. This text box, I will rename it to max. Now it looks a little messy. We're going to click on our border and we're going to expand it all the way through so it selects all of it. We're going to select our first overlay, the stat, and we're going to make it left and center. And we're going to select our second overlay and we're going to put a center, and then also we're going to make it, give it a 5 padding on the left side. Actually 15 padding will do. And the third one, we're going to do a 150 padding and then make it center and center. And we're going to select all of our 3 text boxes, change the color to, actually we will just change the border color. Brush, set it to like red or orangish. Yeah, and we want to select all these 3 stats and then change the sizing to 15. We're going to select our border and make our right padding to -80. That'll fill that up. And I'm going to increase this to 20. I'm going to increase the base overlay padding to 35. Now we compile and we save. And that's it for the header. And now we're going to go to our content drawer, right click on the header, and we're going to duplicate it. Now we're going to call this w_stat line. And in here, we're going to do the same. We're going to go in here. All we're going to do is change the border color to white. Okay. And then the stat value, we're going to change it to black. And now each and every single stat, we want to make it into a variable. I'm going to select the first one and I'm going to say stat name. Second one is going to be the min value. And the third one is going to be max value. Inside of your graph, compile and save. We're going to create a new function and call it set new stats. We're going to take all these three of them and then drag it in. Get, get, get. And inside of your set new stats, we need three inputs. First input that we need is the actual stat itself. This will be of type e underscore player stats, the enumeration that we created. And the second one and the third one is going to be our base value and our max value. And we're going to make both of them into floats. We're going to take our stat name. We're going to drag off of the stat here, and then we're going to say enum to string. And then we're going to drag off of the stat name and say set text. I'm going to copy this 2 more times because I need one for each. And this string, I'm going to add it to the text and then connect this in here. Move this down. Okay. And the base value is going to go in here. Let's make this. This would be our minimum value. The text here. And then our max value, we're going to set our tag here and right there. And that is the setup for your line item. Now we need a widget to show all of these line items, these individual line items with our stats. So I'm going to go to our content drawer, right click, and then go to user interface and then create another widget blueprint. And I'm going to name this W underscore player stat box. Open this player stat box, and we're going to add a vertical box in here. And we're going to make that into a variable and then name it player stat holder. And I'm going to wrap this with a canvas panel so I can put it on the screen as I like it. So I'm going to center the anchor on this one, center on the left side, make the position Y 0. Here I'm going to just drag this lower here a little bit and then stretch this out and drag the corner anchor down here and the top anchor to be up here. Okay, compile and save. And that's how it will look on the screen. I can actually make this a little bit more bigger and then drag the anchors over. We can update this as we see it. Now for the code of this, we can do all of this on the construct. On the construct, we want to say get player character. We're going to cast to our third person character and get player stat component. This is where all of our stats are sitting. And from here, we want to get our stat map. And then drag off of the stat map and search for keys. And now what we want to do is for each and every single stat item is in the stat map, we want to add it to our container. So we're going to do a for each loop. We want to take our stat map and we want to find the item for each and every single item in that keys. And also we want to create a widget. And this would be our stat line. And then in this widget, we're going to drag and then call in that function called set stat value or set new stats. And we're going to drag off of this find and we're going to do a Boolean. Again, we want to make sure that we're finding the actual item before we go anywhere. If we don't find the stat that the player just described, then we don't want to do any of this. We want to drag off of this and say break player stats, grab the stat and then attach it here, base value here, and the max value here. And we want to drag our player stat holder and then say add child. And this child would be our widget that we just created. This is it for the actual UI function, but we also want to update the stats when we want to. Whenever our stats get updated, we want to update the stats. So I'm going to create a custom event and say update stats UI. And in here, what I want to do is I want to take my player stat holder and I want to clear all children, clear children. And then I want to create a new widget. What this widget is going to be is our header widget. And I'm going to say drag this player stat, and then we're going to add child. This will be the child. And we need to do the same thing here as well. So I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to paste it here. Before we go and take anything from the player, we want to add this header on. So I'm going to drag this here and connect all of these execution pins everywhere. And from this update widget, after we add that as a child, we want to then call this function onwards. This will update our stat. How this is going to work is we're going to go to our third person. Off of our event begin play, we're going to drag off of this and then say create widget. We're going to name this player stat box, and we're going to promote it to a variable and call it player stat box. And we're going to say add to viewport. And what we want to do is we want to give this player stat box to our component as well. So we're going to go ahead and create a new variable of type W player stat box in our player stat component, player stat box, and then name this player stat box component. That will be our widget object reference. And once we build the stat box, we want to get our player stat component, and we want to say set player stat box, and we want to add that player stat box in here as well. And in our update player stat, before we go ahead and return the node, we want to get our get player stat box and then say update stats UI, and then return the node. If all went well, this should work good. I can go to my third person character, right click and say when I press the C keyboard button, it should get my player stat component and then say update player stat. I want to update the health, increase it by 10 and increase by my maximum increment by 5. And also I can do another one. Increase my luck by 1 point and my maximum by 2 points. And increase my target and set that target there. And now if I compile and then go ahead and play, you'll notice I have all of my stats here. And then when I press C, you'll notice how the stats are updating just like we want it. And this system is expandable. You can add as many stats as you would like. And then all you have to do is just use this player stat component and then update player stat function to actually update the stats, and our UI and our player stats will change accordingly. Folks, thank you very much for joining by for another quick video on how to do a extended player stats. I hope you liked this tutorial, and if you had, please consider hitting that like button as it helps the channel grow and reach out to more developers. And if you would like to keep yourself updated with all the new tutorials that I publish, please hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified as soon as new tutorials come out. Once again, thank you very much and good luck.